Okay. Hey, great to have you here. Fantastic crowd, fantastic panelists. So what we'll do a short introduction of the panelists. I just want to highlight that the opinions I'm expressing here are strictly mine, right? So I'm not representing anybody. Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. So maybe we want to start. I don't know. I see you, Heiko, right top left. So maybe you want to start a short introduction.
Sure. My name is Heiko Hotz. During the day, I'm a solutions architect for AI and machine learning at AWS. During night, I established a community here in London called NLP London, which brings together NLP enthusiasts, researchers, industries in order to learn more about NLP. Just like Patrick, I'm here today like as a, all opinions are my own. I don't represent AWS today. And thanks for having me, Patrick. And I'll hand it over to Harmony as next.
All right, thank you. By way of introduction, my name is Harmony Mothibe. I'm the founder and director of a company called Boza. So essentially, we are a research and development company. We specialize in applications that are powered by AI, automation, and conversational AI. So over the past 5 years, we've helped businesses integrate these emerging technologies into their business processes to help them become productive, efficient, as well as providing exceptional experience to their customers as well as their staff members. So yeah, I look forward to the discussion. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks. Anna, next.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Collard. I'm based in Cape Town and I work for a company called KnowBe4. And my background is in cybersecurity. I'm probably the one in the group that knows the least about AI, but as a security practitioner, you sort of have to keep your finger on the pulse. So I'm also really much looking forward to the discussion, to learning from you and throwing my 2 cents from a security point of view.
Thank you. Johan?
Patrick, good to see you again. Good to see some familiar faces. My name is Johan Steyn. I used to work for some big consulting firms, and a year ago I started my own business. So I don't have to worry about saying I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'm just me and my one-man company. So I do a lot of teaching, university teaching, executive education in this space, and a lot of AI and automation strategy kind of consulting work. And half the time I think if people know what I know, no one will speak with me because it's changing so rapidly. But yeah, I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Right. And Jorge and myself are the co-founders of the community, right? So we are both based in Geneva or close to Geneva, Switzerland. And yeah, so let's start. We have a few topics. Maybe if you don't mind, I'll start with the technology question, right? To maybe just to start set the scene. Heiko, is ChatGPT a revolution or an evolution?
Great question. So, like in my personal opinion, it is an evolution. And the reason why I'm saying that is there have been gradual progress over the past few years. So GPT-3 has come out in 2020, summer of 2020. ChatGPT is based on a slightly advanced version of that GPT-3 model. It's commonly referred to GPT 3.5. And this slightly advanced version comes from the fact that GPT-3, which is a natural language generation model that has been trained on a lot of text, but hasn't been given any instructions, was good enough to, for example, write an article for The Guardian. The Guardian in November 2020 published an article where they said like this was written by GPT-3, but it was not good enough to be something like, to powering something like a ChatGPT. What happened in January 2022, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, released a famous paper called How to Make Large Language Models to Follow Instructions. And that's where the 0.5 increment comes in. They basically took GPT-3 and taught it how to follow instructions. And also that technology is not new. As I mentioned, it's been introduced in January 2022. And what happened, in my opinion, is in 30th November 2022, when ChatGPT was released, they basically just took that underlying model, that GPT 3.5 model, and put a nice UI on top, removed some of the barriers to entry. If you've ever been to the GPT-3 playground, for example, on the right-hand side, you see all these parameters like temperature, top K, top P. What does that mean? They basically removed all of that, introduced a chat-style component on it, and also memory. So the chatbot remembers what you've been talking about in a previous iteration, and then released that in a fashion that my mom also now can, interact with these language models. So
I didn't ask my mom, by the way, but I should.
So and from what I understand from speaking to people, OpenAI was completely surprised by the success of ChatGPT as well, because it is just an evolution. Like it's in their eyes and in my eyes, but maybe not in the public eyes. It was just an evolution rather than a revolution. But I can totally see how, from a public, general public perspective, this is a complete revolution. So I think two sides there, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Heiko. Maybe same question to you, Harmony Mothibe. You are also more on the technical side, right? If I understand correctly. So.
Yeah, most certainly. All right. So I think I share the same sentiment with Heiko. I believe that sometimes evolution can pave a way for revolution. For instance, like when you look at the ChatGPT on its own, might not be a revolution, but applications that would come out of it would actually revolutionize a whole lot of sectors. If we're gonna look at how the type of applications that would actually build on top, that would be built on top of ChatGPT, would actually revolutionize how we do things, how we change it will actually be a paradigm shift. So from my side, I share the same sentiment with Heiko, as to like it being an evolution as opposed to a revolution. But yes, in the public eye, it might be seen as a revolution. However, like it is an evolution. And also, if we look at how can I proceed?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So if we look at the development of OpenAI and closed domain AI, it's actually something that the company OpenAI was able to accomplish when it comes to just using a very large language model. So previously, like one of the disadvantages around especially like natural language processing and other types of technology was the fact that it had to operate within a specific domain. However, now, like what ChatGPT has done, it has actually, it has changed that narrative or that type of thinking completely. So yeah, it is an evolution towards future revolution.
Now let me go to more like user types of people like Johan, right? I've seen that you have experimented a lot, right? And okay, so is that a revolution for you, or what do you think from a more business perspective?
Yeah, I think it is a natural evolution in where technology is going. If you think of currently, it's 175 billion parameters. The estimation is, although we don't know, is that GPT-4, when it comes out, might be 1 trillion parameters. But again, there's so much confusion and controversy around it. So I think it's an evolution of technology, Patrick, but it's a revolution in that the power of AI, limited AI still, or narrow AI, is now in the hands of millions of people. It's no longer the domain of techies or certain business users. I think anyone who's a content creator or who just wants to, I mean, I don't even really Google stuff anymore. I just ask ChatGPT. Because think of this, and because if you Google something, it doesn't give you the answer. It gives you the links where you will most probably find the answer. And I'm very, very excited about Microsoft Bing when it's released for everyone. I don't have it yet, to have GPT-3 incorporated into Bing. So I don't just get the links, but it actually answers my question. So from power in everyone's hands, and even from a business point of view, I think it's revolutionary, but it opens the door to a lot of dark things as well. And even Anna has been writing about this, because again, the more powerful the good guys go with technology, the more powerful the bad guys go as well.
Yeah, that's what that's a question I'm going to ask later as well, right? But Anna, did you also experiment with ChatGPT? I'm sure. By the way, generative AI is not only ChatGPT, right? Maybe I didn't start with that, but okay, that's a different topic. We can come back to that. But everybody is talking about ChatGPT, fine, right? But probably, or maybe in 6 months we'll speak about something else. But Anna, did you experiment? What's your view on that, right? Is it something you can use in your daily work?
Yeah, and just to pick up on what the previous speakers have said, I definitely agree. If you in the AI space or in a tech space, it's an evolution, but to everybody else is a revolution. And I think that GPT ease of use really made it a commodity. Like anybody, even my grandmother, if she was still alive, bless her, she could use it, you know. And yeah, I use it too. I think particularly in, you know, I do a lot of research work. I have to write articles, prepare presentations, and I use it like I used Google before. Obviously, you cannot take it, you know, for like you have to use it as a precursor for your research and then verify your sources, etc. So it's just for me, I see it as a tool that enhances or speeds up my process, but it doesn't replace the work at all. I can't just, you know, use it to write the article for me. It's not good enough, but it definitely helps with the initial research. Just speeds up the time.
Okay. Let me go to another topic, right? So, what are the applications for generative AI today? What kind of use cases we can foresee, like for enterprises, businesses? How can I use not just ChatGPT, right? The generative AI is more than that. So, Heiko, can you just summarize what can we do with generative AI? Right? Generate text, videos, images.
Yeah. So let me bring two examples. One is a real life example. I spoke to a customer, AWS customer recently, and they said that we want something like this, a personal assistant being available to every employee in our company. And we want it to help with, you know, company specific things, be it like responding to a job application, be it like, you know, I throw a bit of code at this assistant and it writes me the documentation according to the guidelines of the company. So like if you just take the plain language model, that's good maybe in order to, you know, write something like an email or something. But if you augment that and plug it into a platform that has access to, you know, you connect it with document search within your company, something like a SharePoint. So that becomes really powerful then. So that is and that is something that is possible today. Like, and then, you know, a little bit more in looking into the future. That's my vision or my wish. As someone who is, you know, I can't draw if my life depended on it.
Same here.
But obviously generative AI makes that easier for you as well. And I do think, you know, with the space of advancement we see, a few years down the line, I would not be surprised if we can create like entire short films or at least animated films with just describing to an AI what we want, and then, you know, it spits out something, and I interact with it back and forth. And I create my own, like, you know, Star Wars short animation movie or something like that, which makes me very excited. Yeah.
So what are the use cases you see, for example, Johan? Where do you see any application of generative AI in general?
Yeah, I think internally in a business, and Heiko referred to this, if you think of a knowledge base, you know, because often we as employees or as customers don't know how to phrase the question. We can explain the symptom of how we have a problem. But now, where do you go on this massive intranet or website to look for that answer?
Yeah.
So if the technology can understand what I'm actually asking and answer me back. So even things like, you know, when you start your company, like what is the leave policy? What is the paternity leave policy? I mean, again, when I worked for the audit firm, and I guess same with some of your firms, there are thousands and thousands of policies. So rather than spending the whole day reading through it, if you just can very quickly answer me, I think its ability to understand customer queries, whether it's text or voice, to understand the context. I think there's a lot of business applications. I mean, there are platforms already, currently generative platforms where you can ingest a Teams or a Zoom call and say, summarize this call for me, this hour call in 10 sentences. Or take a 200-page non-disclosure document and give me the highlights. So I think the applications are around accuracy and saving time and really better understanding our customers mainly.
Yeah. Anna, you see any other application, or even in your space, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I always look at it from an abuse case point of view. So, you know, Heiko, you mentioned creating movies, something creative, which obviously it's amazing to an actor that's no longer here. We're using, you know, deepfake technology, but I see deepfake technology being used a lot in the adversaries or in the criminal space. And the concerning part there is it's being used. It actually has already been used in the voice deepfake space for business email compromise. But now imagine with more and more better technology using it for actual video deepfakes. It's obviously there's misinformation, manipulation. Particularly what I'm really concerned about is the whole immersiveness. And when we talk about virtual realities, metaverses, if we then combine that immersive experience, which has a bigger psychological impact on people, and then throw the power of or the potential power of targeted or intentional misinformation and manipulation techniques, that makes me a bit nervous. Yeah, I'm scared of that.
Yeah, let's go back to the threats, or the new threats, maybe generated by generative AI. But maybe Harmony, you have other use cases, applications of generative AI, right? That you want to.
All right. So I want to break it down from top to bottom, right? So I think the question is, okay, so what is, maybe for those that are on the line and then they're not familiar with generative AI, maybe they've played with ChatGPT, but haven't actually gone deeper into generative AI. So what that means is the ability to use existing content or existing data to generate new content. So that means, so like there's different levels to that. So there's top level, which is, I mean, there's first level is using text. I mean, generating new content from text, generating new content from audio, or generating new content from visuals or video. So let's talk about text, right? Some of the use cases with regard to text is, you know, the ability to generate, to convert text to voice, right? So like the ability to sort of like transform text into voice, that could be applicable, for instance, in media production, like to generate voice-over. It can be generates new content from text. So like there are some companies that are already like generating that actually like I know we're probably gonna come to these threads and whatnot, but there are some companies that are already like using text, just converting text into video, into audio, in terms of like creating voiceover. So they don't need like sort of voiceover artist anymore, which is one of the threads. And then, but if we go deeper, where we actually can use like text to generate, for instance, there are some applications that already exist online that you can, instead of hiring a company to run the whole media thing, or to generate or to create a promo video, you can actually go online. For instance, Waymark is one of the organizations or applications where you can just insert the name of the URL, the text in terms of the promo text, and then also from there you're able to generate a new video. So these are some of the applications that we can that already exist in terms of generating new content from existing content. So I do believe that there's going to be obviously some threats along the way, but in terms of the use cases, there's been a lot of use cases, especially in education. If you, for instance, if you're teaching someone that is visually impaired, but they want to read text, but they want to be able to read text, how do you deliver that content to them? If you are in the space where like you have kids that don't understand the language, you can use text that gets generated into voice in a different language. So the use cases are many, and I think it's I can go on and on about use cases, but let me stop here.
Okay, cool. No, thanks. That's good. Thank you very much. Regarding, because you mentioned deepfakes, Hannah, right earlier. So this is also very. Do you see, because you are in the cybersecurity space, right? So do you see more threats? I mean, obviously not due to ChatGPT, but in general to generative AI, right? So do you see more deepfakes, more identity, how you call it, identity, people stealing identities or
theft, identity theft?
Yes, Jorge, thank you.
Yes, but not necessarily because of the use of AI. So the sad reality is, and that's something we have to take into account for any future, whether it's Web3 or whatever future technology, is that we have a lot of problems in Web2 in the current situation. And the bad guys don't actually need a lot of sophisticated technology, because to steal somebody's identity, I just have to buy existing, lists. There's 25 billion username and password out there for sale, and the top passwords are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can send you a phishing email that is very basic, hasn't changed in whatever 10, 20 years, and it's still very effective. So there is actually not really a business case for the bad guys to necessarily invest that much into new technologies, because the existing simple stuff just still works so well. However, obviously they also, like us, they use these tools to make their lives easier. So they're still run as proper corporations. You have like the syndicates that have different teams doing different things, but they don't necessarily, even though there's been like some very point cases where we had, like I mentioned earlier on, where we've seen business email compromise being done with voice phishing or voice generated text. We haven't seen a massive increase in these attacks yet. It's still very much basic. Doesn't mean that they're not playing with it and definitely taking advantage of the. So when I said disruption earlier on, like the revolution, the criminals are just as much interested, like my grandmother, hypothetically, in using it and making their lives easier.
Yeah, that's interesting. But okay, maybe then another topic is bias, right? Because bias, generative AI has a tendency to increase the bias, right? I believe, right? Not just generative AI, but AI in general, right? So is there a risk there, right? You have like, I don't know, AI, generative AI deciding what's right, what's wrong, who is right, who is wrong, who is perfect, not perfect, who is the model, I see a bit of, but it's maybe not really specific to generative AI, right? But still, because you're going to take, for example, right, you're going to take text from the past, right, that has a lot of bias, and then you're going to amplify this with generation, right? So I don't know, is there, Heiko, any opinion on that? How do you see, how can we fight against it technically?
Well, so there's a few questions in there. So let me start with the inherent bias and how to deal with that. What we're trying to do, at least these days, is so yes, first of all, there is bias in these AI models because they've been trained on the internet, which is some sort of reflection of our society. And as a society, we are biased. The internet is biased, therefore these AI models are biased. I think the best way to deal with that is just being aware of the bias and ideally having what is called model cards. So if you go, for example, there's this company that hosts a lot of AI models. It's called Hugging Face. They have a model hub. And what they're introducing is super interesting in terms of like, they want to encourage everyone who uploads a model to their model hub to write a model card. And that model card has some technical information, how many billion parameters does that model have? But also they encourage every author of a model to write about the biases and limitations. What have they tested? What have they not tested? And so that everyone who uses these open source models is aware of these biases. You can't really mitigate them yet, but at least when you're aware, you know in which situations you'd rather not use these kind of models. Now that leads me then to the next part of your question, like what happens if we let these models decide who, for example, gets a loan, or we let it decide who is right or not, or let it judge a case, a legal case. That is up to us to use these AI models for these cases. And obviously we shouldn't, not at this point in time, maybe never, but that is something that we're in control of. And when we take these models, then we should be aware of like, how is it actually going to impact the decision it makes. The last thing I want to mention is there is a lot of efforts into transparency into these models. But as of now, as I'm aware, at least, we don't really understand. Let's say, let's go back to natural language generation models. We don't really understand why they put out this text. I mean, we know that they are predictors. It's basically autocorrect on steroids, right? It just tries to predict the next word, but we don't actually know how these probabilities are calculated. It's too complicated. It's a black box for us today. There are efforts into getting more insights in that, but that, my estimation, is going to take a long time.
I did a simple test not so long ago, and then I was kind of okay. So somebody gave me a hard time on LinkedIn, right? Because I was just checking a simple thing about gender, and obviously, right, you're trained on bias, and then you just reflect on what you see, right? The model just reflects what it sees. But that's something. I'm sure Johan, you have something to say about bias, right? Or Anna, or Moti, yeah.
Yes.
Harmony Mothibe as well. Yeah.
It was a wake-up call for me. So I'm, as you can see, I'm Caucasian. My son is adopted. He's
me too.
Yes. But about 2 or 3 months ago, I helped my son with a school assignment, and the assignment was called "Are Robots Our Friends?" And then we Googled, image searched robots. And then he said an interesting thing. He said, "Daddy, why do the robots all look like you and not like me?" And then I really started investigating this. And I actually wrote a number of articles on this. That because the societal biases that we have in the world are reflected in these data sets. I think something like DALL-E or ChatGPT use uncurated, they just scrape these data sets. They are doing a lot to fight biases, but then I started playing with the DALL-E, and if you ask it, paint me an oil painting in the style of Van Gogh of a leadership team. Most of the results will be of men and Caucasian men. If you ask it something that's traditionally associated with female roles like caregiving, housewife, etc., then it would just be of women. And also the race disparity. But if you ask it for a picture on a family, it will show you a man, a woman, and a child. But the world has changed. Why can't it be 2 men and a child? or a man without a wife and a child, or two, etc. So I think we're going to spend many years to work out these biases, and I think it'll never be perfect, as long, and maybe to Heiko's earlier point that I took out of it, as long as we're aware of this and doing our best, and not just going obliviously through life thinking there are no biases in these data sets, because the damage it can do is really immense to our children in particular.
I know it's a topic by itself, right? So, but maybe Hannah and Mothibe say something about bias, right?
Yeah, if I may, it's a couple, I think it's 2 years ago, so 3 years ago, I read a book called Invisible Woman. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's really fascinating about the bias in big data and the fact that, you know, this is not an AI problem. This is a general problem that we need to solve. You know, the fact that these crash test dummies are built based on an average male physique. So the actual security in the cars are not manufactured taking into account women sizes. So this is like a really, you know, it's like Johan, it's a big worldwide issue. I think in the AI specifics, you know, I think I read some stats that the 12% or 6% of the developers are female, or particularly also female of color. You know, that needs to change. I think a lot of effort is being done, and awareness and conversations always bring this topic up. So I'm hoping that by raising the awareness, by creating ethical guidelines that will particularly look into this, that take it as a given that this is, you know, because it's based on data that's out there in the internet that's biased, you know, that's the fact. So how do we make sure that the results of it can be, you know, can be addressed, and then try and get more females or non-binary, as well as people of different colors into the space. One horrible stat, by the way, is, you know, if you female and of color, you are 35% more likely being harassed online. You know, this is just, it's a human bias. I don't know, it's awful, but it's
but
you know, not just an AI. Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of bias in society, but is generative AI amplifying this bias? That's, you know, and maybe Harmony, you want to say something about that?
Right. So I'd like to give you an example based on one of the projects that we actually worked on a few years ago. So a few years ago, we developed an AI solution for one of the banks in South Africa. So I'll just briefly about it in general. So we developed a solution, we implemented it within the bank. They have about 35,000 staff members. So we went live, and then it was all champagnes and everything, celebrations and whatnot. The following Monday, there was a call, you know, like there's an outcry coming from a department that handles, you know, support for people with disability, to say we are unable to utilize the platform or to utilize the AI solution. So I mean, us as a development company, we were kind of like, it was a wake-up call to say, like, do you check all the corners? Do you check yourself? Do you check, you know, like, I would say it was sort of an unconscious bias, but it was not something that we have experienced before. But to Johan's statements, I believe that every time when there's as long as there's awareness, like, and then there's a will to fix those unconscious those biases, then one step, say we would be able to solve it. We might be exaggerating, but I personally think that with regard to generative AI, I think it's more about garbage in, garbage out. Whatever that we feed, the models that we feed AI, I mean, these applications with the data sets, it's gonna result obviously in at some point we actually don't even have control of the output, but we do have control over the input that we actually feeding these algorithms with. And then the other one, I think to say, so I wouldn't necessarily say we amplify. I mean, this generative AI amplifies bias. However, like if you think about as development companies or as content generators of these applications and whatnot, it is our responsibility to make sure that the data that we train on, like, it actually doesn't have bias on it within it. And then one example that I'll give in, and I'll just give in wrapping up this, answering this question. We worked on a solution for talent acquisition, like for one of our clients. It's just sort of like automating the entire process of talent acquisition. So you can imagine that already there's bias in talent acquisition all everywhere, with or without these technologies, right? So people decide who they want to hire and whatnot. But what we learned in the process, we learned that, like there's certain decisions that are not supposed to be made by computers or machines. For instance, like if we allow computers to decide on who to hire based on gender, race, age, ethnic group, and whatnot, then we actually are training these models with biased data. So I think it's to just summarize it, by garbage in, garbage out.
As usual. But the good thing is that if we are aware of it, we can fight against it. If we're not, obviously we won't do anything. That's bottom line, I guess. But
okay, but Patrick, let me
okay, go ahead.
Let me say something here. You have been talking half an hour here, and and I want to bring another angle here that and also hear the feedback from the panelists here. Look, my background is actually computer linguistics at the university. I studied this, and from the point of view of the language, I have seen that the ChatGPT or GPT in general is, for me, a huge revolution. And the revolution comes from the fact that GPT, and the fascination from GPT is actually the fact that they are using the most essential human means, which is the communication, the language. And these are, so this is the change is so huge that we don't notice that we are moving from become the Homo faber, this man of the tools, which has been actually our definition for the past 2,000 years, to somehow like is Homo fabulari, so that the man who can just by talking start to create a reality, and this is huge. But now this comes to one point that Heiko already brought it up, something, this black box, which is the language. The language is a black box actually in itself, the human language. We don't know. Right now, when I am talking, I don't know, and I cannot predict how I'm going to change my word thinking and how it is getting impacted by the moment I am and what I have yet heard and what I'm reminding and so on. And I think this is the point that we have to really to take into consideration when we talk about all these phenomena, bias and or discrimination and so on, that we are getting this. It is part of our own fiber, human fiber, that we are using and playing with it for the past 2,000 years or 2,500 years, and we are bringing up here. So this is what I would like to just to bring it up and then hear what do you think about this? Because we are this is for me the essential problem here. Can we solve that?
Go ahead. Yes, sure.
I just wanted to pick this up because I find that really fascinating, Jorge, and I 100% agree. So there's been this study. I tried to recollect the details of the study, but it's basically looking at judges and how they sentence someone who's been guilty, like how large is the sentence that they're giving to someone who's been found guilty. And it turns out that these judges, right before lunch break, are much harsher in giving out the sentence. They would give someone 3 years, whereas after lunch break or in the morning after breakfast, they would give only 1 year. So 100% agree with your sentiment. It's bias is something inherent to us humans, and then I feel like there is a way forward where we, as humans, being aware of that bias and using technology that we can mitigate that, working together with technology in a clever way to mitigate these biases. And one of those examples could be, although it's not the most popular one these days, but could be autonomous cars, right? Like we are terrible drivers as humans, But if we do it right, you know, like I feel like there is a solution in technology. There's not only problems, there are also solutions in technology.
Yeah, indeed. With regards, okay, there's also a topic that's interesting. This is the whole topic around, and we could speak the whole evening, by the way, but let's limit ourselves to 1 hour. There's a topic about data privacy, right? Confidentiality. There are two things, right? First, the data has been trained on a lot of sources, internet, so maybe our personal details have been used, right, to train models, right? And at some point, maybe our personal details could surface again, right? I don't know. Right, Heiko? I don't know, frankly. I'm not. I tried to ask. I tried to ask ChatGPT about me. He didn't know about me, which is a good sign. Probably, I don't know. But you know, it's been trained. Maybe our pictures that we've put somewhere in Facebook, right? They might be used to be, and then suddenly you have a clone somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It's I just worked recently on what is called fine-tuning stable diffusion. So let me give a little bit of context. Stable diffusion is one of those text-to-image generators. You type in a little bit of text, and it will create an image. Now, unless you are a celebrity, it wouldn't actually know you. But if I type in something like picture of you know, George Clooney on the moon, it will do that. Now, the interesting part is you can train these models with just a few images of yourself, like 5 images of yourself. You can further train or fine-tune these models. And after 10 minutes, you have a new model that knows your face as well, just like it knows George Clooney's face. And that, I do agree, is a bit scary, because now, like any person who has a little bit of an online profile, I could take pictures of you, Patrick. I'm sure I will find 5 pictures somewhere online. I can create a new stable diffusion model, and suddenly I can, you know, put your face on anything I like. It goes back to the deepfake problem. But it got me thinking of, like, maybe it is time to be a little bit more careful and think about what we're putting out there.
Yeah, that's a good advice, probably. But I mean, nothing against any social network at all, right? But probably, yeah, more careful. Any thought around that? I don't know about privacy, data privacy, confidentiality, Anna or Harmony, because okay, if this is, there's also another side to it, right? When you go to these tools, right, you also are putting some data that might be confidential. So, and especially, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of aspects there. The one is that you just mentioned, you know, making people aware of what they put out there about themselves, because it can be used and is being used by these automatic models. And you want to, you know, maybe if you're George Clooney, you don't want it to create the pictures of you on a mean, you know. I think on the other aspect, again, you know, the way we do privacy at the moment doesn't really work so well. And currently it's not it's not a perfect world, and I think generations after us will be sort of used to that. They don't have much of a privacy. I mean, if you look at a lot of the youth, you know, they do know that they're selling their, you know, they're selling their digital identity to get free access to TikTok, whatever it is. So there is that. So I think just user awareness is really important to, you know, educate people. But then there's also, I think there's just recently there's been like a court case, was it against GitHub or Microsoft, where it used like a piece of code. I can't remember the details. It was really interesting where exactly that happened. And maybe not so much for privacy, but more intellectual property point of view, where it was taken without consent and then being reused in their version of generative AI. And now they're being sued. And it will be very interesting to see what the outcomes of that court case and what that means for future AI or generated content and who owns what. Like, whose privacy is it? If my photo is online, it reuses it, do I have a right to it anymore? Well, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, right. Okay, because if you look at and this is maybe Jorge, right? In financial services, strongly regulated industry where you have to be very careful about data you share and so on. So how something like ChatGPT, for example, is that something we can think of?
No, but this, of course, for me, the problem with privacy, especially in the European Union, where have been very severe GDPR policies and recommendations about how to use that, severe limited the number of real use cases here. For example, we cannot just put it out there, ChatGPT or GPT in general as it is, because, for example, if I want to put GPT in a medical center and the people will come and then have consultation about it, the ChatGPT right now, or GPT in general, it will store the questions. And already this might be a problem because I am storing already I might have this condition, this disease, and so on, so on. This will be already an indicator. This is the first one. The second one is what also the point from the intellectual property that you just said and about this, how this is going to be. I have been chatting long hours with ChatGPT about philosophy, and then how the origins of the language and the impact and why the human beings have this need to go into oracles and to have conversations on all this. It's like I have been doing hours of research on internet. This is equivalent, more or less. Yeah. And now, for me, this is an intellectual property because this conversation it is actually my question which created this content. So now, is this belong to OpenAI.com because they can reuse it, or it is mine? This is also a very interesting question. And then when somebody brings a very interesting text into midjourney.com or DALL-E, and it creates something which is pretty unique in terms of originality, in terms of this creation, it is true that is the engine doing it, but it's actually my prompt, my wording which created that. So where do they start the new creation, and where do we start to put the boundaries of this?
Yeah, I just want to take some questions I see in the chat. And there's one that is a bit more philosophical. Just a theoretical question to biases from the other way around. Who would define what unbiased means, right? That's a question that I'm afraid we won't be able to solve now, but because this is exactly the question of who defines what politically correct is, or what conservative is, or what left is, or whatever, right? Not have the answer, but
the Swiss, maybe?
Yeah. Is it possible to recognize such fakes in pictures and video? Can we recognize fakes in pictures, videos? I don't know. Who wants
I think. Sorry, I'll take a stab at it. I think it's going to be a back and forth, just like with any security kind of measures. You know, someone will, like, we have some security in place. Someone will come up with a methodology to crack the encryption or whatever, and then someone will come up with a new encryption methodology, and someone, like, it's going to be a back and forth. I feel like that's, you know, from what I see in past experience. But I'm sure Anna has also something to say on that.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it used to be relatively simple to detect it with the human eye. Like you could see the color discoloration, or it was unnatural. But now, as the technology progresses, as how it becomes better and better, it's more difficult to recognize it. However, you can use technology or computing, actually AI technology, to detect it. So there are certain criteria that can be used to detect it, but it's very difficult to do that with the human eye. So you need to use technology. But again, you know, it's always a cat and mouse game.
Harmony, you want to say something?
All right. Yeah, no, I think I think it is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that has existed for over the years. So even in Web 2.0, we had that challenge where users would just read a little phrase that says by using our platform you actually accept our terms and conditions, but do they really read through the terms and conditions? The answer is no, not always, So, but that is, sometimes we don't even know the use case of this kind of technologies. You look at an application like TikTok, like how many kids are out there generating their avatars like on a daily basis, like that's generative AI, like they're creating their own avatars. They don't even know that actually their data is actually stored somewhere that is going to be used to train other models, new models for something else. So I think it's a whole thing that like companies, I look at it as a triangle. So we have users here that sometimes they don't even know that their data is being used to train other models, and then you have corporates or companies that are actually utilizing that data. Sometimes it could be like a data breach that happens there, and then they lose all the data to other people that actually like use that data for something else. And on the last piece of the triangle, we have regulators. Sometimes like regulators might not even be aware of the future use cases. So they might regulate how people, like how these organizations collect the data, but how it processes it, it might be something else. So like it has always been in the issue of how data is collected, processed, and also used, and as well as other use cases of that data. It has always been a challenge, not only with generative AI, but all other types of technology. So, but I think it's a battle that we're still gonna go through it. And then, but to answer like the other question where I think you spoke about, I think it was more around, me just trying to I'm losing my chain of thoughts, but you asked a question about that, trying to remember the question, but however, like it's more about, I think like generally it's an issue that has been existing for over the years, and then we still have to see how far we can actually improve it over time. But it's
the other question we have, just to not to interrupt you, but there was an iterative question saying that so far it's been easy to train the models, but every year after the proportion of content that will no longer be original will increase, right? So yes, that's a recursive thing, right? You train on original, but then you create less original, and then at the end you have just artificially created content, right? It's like at some point.
That can also be philosophical, though, right? Yeah. I mean, who decides what is original? Like,
okay. Yeah.
Like these, like let me put it this way: these generative models today are the worst they're ever going to be. They're only going to become better. So I'm not sure, something like that is written by a ChatGPT. Whether I mean, I see where the question comes from, but who decides what is original? I think some of the stuff that ChatGPT produces is quite original.
Yeah, true. In fact, yes, right. Yeah, because we are also kind of who knows, right? So are we also robots, right? But we are humans, but maybe created by something else. Who knows? But anyway, yeah. Cool. And why don't we change the name ChatGPT? That I cannot have. That's a good one. Yeah, because it's a bit long. But anyway, yeah, cool. I think we are almost over. Unfortunately, Johan has been hit by power cuts, right? You're saying, Anna, right? So
Yes,
unfortunately, okay, unfortunately, but almost over. I don't know if anybody wants to add something, something we didn't address. We had a nice conversation. It was a cool conversation. unfortunately, 1 hour is kind of short, but I think we addressed a few things. So, anything you want to add, Anna, Harmony? I don't ask for her because it's going to take 5 minutes. So.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
Something very interesting. So in 2017, I was at the United Nations. So we were dealing with like lethal autonomous weapon systems. So some of these technologies that we speak about now could be we don't see the danger of them until they're being applied in things like weapons and military, where the decision of life and death is dependent upon like technologies. So it's one of the things that actually interest me. Like, so my question is, like, are you in the future going to be host this kind of conversations? Maybe we can have that type of discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Obviously, the technology is used by good guys, good folks, and but bad guys, bad folks as well. Yeah. All right, thanks so much. That was really cool. I would be interested to know in 1 year what happened to generative AI, right? To ChatGPT. There will be maybe a new one, right? Who knows? We'll see. And thank you so much for attending. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening. I think we are all in the same time zone, more or less. Yeah. So cool.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Patrick. Thanks for organizing.
Thank you,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.